the Maryland State Library Agency. Samuel, you're going to start us off?
Yes, sir. Let me share my screen and I'll get started. Oops. I am unable to share my screen. Can whoever's running the meeting let me do that so I can share the presentation?
Yeah, give me just a second, Sam. I'm trying to find you.
Sure.
Sam, you have the ability to share.
Okay. Am I?
You're on.
Go ahead. Here?
You're good.
Okay. All right. You should all see the analysis document for the Maryland State Library Agency's Public Library Capital Grants Program. The analysis includes $5 million in funding for the program. Exhibit 1, this gives an overview of the total allocation by county throughout the history of the program. The main point here is that Montgomery counties received the most throughout the program's history, followed by Howard and Somerset in second place. The Exhibit 2 shows the projects that are funded in the 22 budget. There are 6 projects. I'm going to try to go through these fairly briefly. The first is Allegheny County LaVale. We would note that the total project cost has been revised to $4.8 million for this project. It was initially listed as $4.4 million in the capital budget books for this year. However, the agency has notified that there was a notification that the project was slightly over budget for about $323,000, so the project cost has been revised upward. We also note that this project receives 90% of the state funding, which is the highest cost share under the program's funding formula. The request for 22 is the final portion of funding for this project to complete its construction and equipment. Construction began in November and will be complete in May of 22. The next, the Anne Arundel Riviera Beach Library, which will construct a new facility in Anne Arundel County. This is also the final portion of funding to complete the construction and equipment for this project. The overall cost, we note in the analysis, decreased by $2.7 million from last year's estimate due to various value engineering efforts to bring the project within budget. Construction began in August and will be complete in December. Calvert County Twin Beaches. This project was initially funded in fiscal 20. However, it did not include funding in last year's capital budget. This was due to the fact that there was a delay in the schedule. There was a property transfer from the town of North Beach to Calvert County that caused the project not to go under design contract until February of 20. So therefore, the schedule was delayed by what was originally anticipated, and the further funding was delayed until this year. This year's funding of $2 million is for beginning the construction for the project. The total project cost has slightly increased from the initial preliminary estimate. Part of this is due to the finding that additional structural support would be needed to build on the site that was chosen. A part of this was due to the fact that it's in a coastal area next to the Chesapeake Bay, so they would need additional structural support. The Caroline County project, this is a new project in the CIP. This would renovate the first floor of the Denton Library. The total state share is going to be 79%, and Carrollton County is going to use a private bequest that they received to fund their share of the project. The project design will begin in July and the construction will begin a year later in July of 22. The Frederick County Middleton Library, this received initial funding for design last year, and the funding this year is to complete the design and begin construction. This is a new facility in Middletown, and the design is projected to be complete in July and construction beginning in October. Lastly, the Queen Anne's County Kent Island renovation and expansion. This project will renovate and expand the current facility to better meet the needs of the community due to rapid population increase in Queen Anne's County. There was a $1.9 million decrease in total project cost from last year due to value engineering efforts to further bring the cost within budget. This is the final amount of project funding requested to complete the funding for the construction and equipment. And construction began in August and will be complete in February of 22. The analysis also notes two other miscellaneous items. The first is that there was an administrative reallocation of funds. The program language allows the agency to move funding from projects that were rescinded to other projects. And in May of 2020, the agency notified the capital budget committees that the $120,000 that was appropriated to Worcester County in fiscal 20 was rescinded by the county, and the agency planned to reallocate it to the Cecil County Northeast Library project. The analysis also notes that there was a proposal to increase funding for this program annually. The Building Lifelong Library Learners Act of 2020, which was passed by the General Assembly during last year's session, but was vetoed by the governor for policy reasons. This bill was voted on by both the Maryland Senate and the House of Delegates during this year's session earlier this month to override the governor's veto. And if this bill was fully enacted into statute, it would increase the annual funding for the grant program from its current level of $5 million annually to $7.5 million annually. Lastly, for the recommended actions, DLS is recommending to approve the $5 million in funding in the budget for the program. And that concludes the presentation for this program.
Excellent job, Sam. Any questions? Seeing none?
Yes, that's Senator Peters.
Mm-hmm.
This is
Weitzel.
Doug Weitzel. I was trying to get my
Delegate
hand.
Weitzel.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask a question? Yeah, question. Could you go back to Exhibit 1?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll have to share I'll share my screen again and pull that up. Yes.
If you look over in Exhibit 1 to a little county called Garrett, this is from 2008 to 2021, they got, according to that, zero funding. You have an explanation. I think they made some applications and stuff, and the town of Friendsville was looking for funding because they share their little library with the town hall. Do you know of any reason why they aren't getting any funding at all?
This chart reflects the data that the agency provided us based on the total funding that has been approved since the program's inception in fiscal 2008 until the year's allowance. So this chart is not reflecting Garrett County having received any grants throughout the program's history. The actual reasons why that is based on the criteria that the agency uses to select projects. So the answer for that, they would have to provide.
Right, I can follow up on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Can I ask the librarian and the administration, actually, delegate, who I don't know will be in front of us, but you certainly have access to the administration.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's hear from the Maryland State Librarian, Ms. Irene Padilla.
Well, good afternoon, chairpersons and members of the committee. I am Irene Padilla, State Librarian, and with me today is Renee Croft, Library Facilities Program Manager, and Donna Roberto, our Chief Financial Officer. We're here in support of the Maryland State Library Agency's capital budget, which includes the mandated amount of $5 million, as well as a request for supplemental funding of $323,000 for the County Public Library Capital Grants Program in fiscal year 2022. Without this supplemental funding, Allegheny County will need to delay opening the newly renovated and expanded Lavelle Library for approximately 3 months after the start of fiscal year 2023. On behalf of the entire Maryland Library community, I want to begin by thanking you for your ongoing commitment to the development of public library facilities. Since this program's implementation in fiscal year 2008, with the unanimous support of the General Assembly, your mandate to provide $5 million in capital funds annually has helped 23 of the state's 24 library systems improve one or more of their library buildings. Additionally, your investment of $67,325,000 since the inception of the program has been matched by local funds of approximately $360 million, nearly 6 times the amount of the state's investment. You have a written testimony, and Samuel Quist's very thorough analysis provides an excellent description of the program. Thank you so much, Samuel.
Thank
So I
you.
won't go into detail about the proposed projects of the 18 new libraries the 18 new libraries that have opened because of this program. However, I do want to extend an invitation to you to make virtual visits inside the new Michael E. Bush Library in Annapolis, as well as the new public library and senior center in Leonardtown. Links to the photographs and visual tours are included in our written testimony. Both of these facilities were completed in 2020 and are absolutely stunning. And we just can't thank you enough for your support to help make them happen. Finally, we want to express our gratitude for your recognition of the need to increase the funding mandate for this program from $5 million to $7.5 million through the Building Lifelong Library Learners Act of 2020. While the library capital program was flat funded, the library's needs and costs for construction continued to escalate. So with your ongoing support, the Maryland libraries remain resilient and responsive to their community's needs and will help ensure that the state is well positioned for rapid recovery. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Thank you again for all your work.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll move on to BCCC. Sam, you're up again. Let's hit the highlights.
Sure. I'll share my screen again. Baltimore City Community College. There are 3 projects in the CIP. There is 1 project that receives funding in fiscal 22, the deferred maintenance program. The deferred maintenance program is a new initiative. There's $13 million in total funding scheduled between fiscal years 22 and 26 for this program, including the initial $1.25 million this coming fiscal year. This program was based off of a 2019 assessment, a facilities assessment that was completed by the college, which identified a total of $41.3 million in total deferred maintenance needs over the next 10 years. Taking this assessment, the college then completed a facilities master plan, which identified a series of larger capital projects and smaller deferred maintenance projects to address this need. They separated out deferred maintenance projects that were components of these larger capital projects, as well as other projects that were included in facilities that were going to be demolished and other non-capital projects. As a result of this refinement, they came up with a list of 4.4 million approximately of small deferred maintenance projects to be funded through the program. And BCCC plans to work with the Department of General Services to prioritize which individual projects they will use the initial 1.25 million in funding for. Exhibit number 1 shows the categories of deferred maintenance programs, projects based on the data from DBM, which will, the funding between fiscal 22 and 26 will be used towards. The largest category by cost is for boiler replacements in a few different buildings on the campus. There's also plumbing and electrical work, some elevator replacement, and a few other miscellaneous items. The analysis also notes the college has received funding, they received a grant award from the Community College Facilities Renewal Grant Program, which is overseen by the Maryland Higher Education Commission. A grant was awarded in fiscal 21. However, due to cost containment actions by the Board of Public Works, the Board of Public Works cut the entirety of funding for this program. The governor's 22 proposed operating budget, however, includes a proposed special fund deficiency appropriation to put back in the funding that was cut. And if that deficiency appropriation was approved, that would restore the college's $500,000 grant, which they have indicated they have would plan to use that funding for some additional deferred maintenance improvement costs. The analysis also notes one issue, the Bard Building site redevelopment. There was talk that the college had planned to demolish the Bard Building located in downtown Baltimore in order to use the site for surface parking to raise revenue while future redevelopment plans were developed. This building has been vacant for several years, and there was a fire that took place in January 2020, which caused extensive damage to the facility. However, the plan for demolishing the building has not been finalized. There's a current cost estimate of about $3 to $4 million for demolition. Due to the condition of the building and the demonstrated need for demolishing it, the Department of Legislative Services is recommending that if the college does not proceed with plans on its own to demolish the building, funds from the Department of Housing and Community Development's Strategic Demolition Fund should be utilized for this purpose. The recommended actions section also includes an item recommending the committees to ask for documentation from the college prior to any execution of an MOU to privately finance the redevelopment of the site or the demolition of the building, to notify the committees in writing of those plans. There's also two other projects in the future years of the CIP. The first, the Bard Building Library Learning Commons renovation and addition. This was a project that had previously appeared in the CIP under a demolition and new construction. However, the version of this project included in the 21 CIP is a revised scope, which includes only a renovation and expansion rather than demolition. There's also a nursing building renovation and addition project. This is a new project in the CIP this year, which would program initial funding in 26 for the renovation and expanding of the school's nursing building. The last item in the analysis is there is a deauthorization proposed in the budget. This is a deauthorization of funds for a previous project, the main building renovation project, which was completed. However, I would note a couple of items related to this. The college, as well as DGS and DBM, have both indicated that they would be in favor of striking this deauthorization. The project was completed. However, there was a proposed program modification that is being initiated, which would conduct some additional maintenance on the HVAC system of that building in order to do some corrective action. While it was indicated that that could be done using previously unencumbered funds, there is an engineering assessment that is currently in progress to determine the precise cost of doing that. So there is some indication that on behalf of the college that they should wait to deauthorize until the precise cost is initiated However, the previous estimate was that that could be done with previously unencumbered funds and no additional funds would be needed. For the DLS recommended actions, there are 3 actions that DLS is making. The first is adopting committee narrative regarding the Bard Building site redevelopment. As I mentioned previously, 30 days prior to final execution of any MOU to privately finance the demolition and redevelopment of that site, the committees would ask for a document that summarizes the key terms and reasons for the private development of that site. The second recommendation is to approve the $1.25 million for the deferred maintenance program and general obligation bond funding. The third recommendation is to approve the deauthorization of the main building renovation. As I mentioned previously, there was some indication that there's some opposition to doing this deauthorization. However, DLS was only recently notified of this, and we were not notified prior to the completion of this analysis. So that's why we have included a recommendation to deauthorize. But that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions for Sam?
Let's have Sam stop sharing so we can see if there's any. Thanks.
Sure.
All right, seeing none. Thank you, Sam. Let's hear from the president of BCCC, Dr. Debra McCurdy.
Yes, and thank you and good afternoon, Chairman Peters, Chairman Barnes, members of the subcommittees. For the record, I am Debra McCurdy, president of Baltimore City Community College, and I'm joined by Shauna Williams, the interim vice president for administration and finance, and Mr. Michael Thomas, the vice president for workforce development and continuing education, and Catherine Dixon, the assistant vice president for facilities. And thank you so much for this opportunity to provide a brief testimony in support of the governor's 22 capital budget recommendations for Baltimore City Community College, which includes the $1.25 million for deferred maintenance, as well as the restoration of the FY21 $500,000 through the community college facilities renewal grant. Let me also thank our analyst, Samuel Quist, for his support in analysis and working with us certainly over the past few weeks. And I joined this college in 2019, so it's a great opportunity for me to come back before you again. I want to note that this past year, the college has completed a 10-year facilities master plan. In October, we look forward to executing the planning efforts set forth to improve the campus for our students. You have the analysis in the college's written response, and I will keep my remarks fairly brief. Thank you again for past the $4.62 million for construction bond funding in 2020 to complete the construction of the Loop Road improvements for the BCCC's Liberty campus. So this is now scheduled for completion in May of 22. Once again, the college does support the $500,000 included in the FY21 Community College Facilities Renewal Grant administered by AMHAC. The grant, this money will be used for campus-wide much needed improvements, water fountain replacements for accessibility, bathroom refurbishment for fine arts and the PE building, fire alarm replacements in the life science building, and hot water heater replacement at the PE center as well. Even with the funding, the fact remains that BCCC has not received any capital or critical maintenance funding from the state for deferred maintenance, certainly in some time. In March 2019, as Mr. Christ has indicated, the facilities assessment was completed, really showing just how dire the deferred maintenance situation is at the institution, with still some $31 million of which were classified as immediate need, requiring attention within 1 to 3 years. Immediate needs are campus infrastructure, major electrical things that are wrong, our systems, plumbing systems upgrades, life safety projects, which are certainly of dire importance. BCCC requested the 4.2 million in FY22 for deferred maintenance, and that's to keep pace with the $31 million of which are classified as immediate, requiring attention in the 1 to 3 year period. The capital improvement plan currently being recommended, though, includes the 1.25 million in FY22 with a total of 13 million over a 5 year period. This is only going to make a very small dent in the backload. With the 1.25 million, the college really is planning to focus on mainly one building, which is the life science building, to bring it up to speed. Again, replacing boilers and hot water conditions in the building, automation systems, and so forth. In FY22, we also requested design funding for the Learning Commons renovation and addition, and the nursing building renovation and addition. In anticipation of these projects moving forward, deferred maintenance from both of these buildings have not been requested, and the final programming documents for both projects will be submitted to DBM and DGS in March of this year, and we expect to also look for design funding in the FY24 and 26 respective funding years. As far as DLS recommended actions, Baltimore City Community College, we do agree to provide the committee with a narrative updating the progress made on the Bard Building site development. Currently, we have issued requests for expressions of interest on the demolition of the Bard Building and surface parking lot concession agreement with expressions of interest which are due March the 5th. Following that evaluation, a reduced candidate list will be developed and a request for proposals will be issued in April of 21, with the firm being selected in August of 21. The college will be pleased to provide any updated narrative at that time. We also concur with DLS's recommendation for 1.25 million in deferred maintenance projects, although a substantial investment would need to be made just to catch up from past years. Finally, and respectively, we do not concur with the deauthorization of the funding for the administrative wing renovation project. We received program modification approval from DBM and DGS over the past several months to include work that was left out of the original project. The chillers were replaced as a part of the project, but the cooling towers were not upgraded, which simply means with the demand for the building, these systems simply do not talk to each other. Currently, an engineering firm has been hired to conduct the assessment to further define the scope and cost estimate for the project, which is scheduled for completion in May 21. And so we respectively request that all funding allocated to this project remain intact until the engineering assessment is complete. So let me conclude thanking again Chairman Peters and Barnes and the subcommittee, and I invite you to visit us at BCCC and to discuss firsthand to see the needs that continue to exist at the institution. I'll end my comments there, and we are happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, President McCurdy. I did visit you with Senator Hayes a while back, so maybe Chairman Barnes can visit.
Yes, you
Thanks.
did. Upon my arrival, I think in 2019, we did meet and talk quite extensively about the needs.
Okay.
And I'll just echo thanks for your great work.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we'll hear from Ian, Morgan State University.
My screen. All right, so at this point, everybody should be seeing the analysis. There are 4 projects for the university recommended for funding in the capital improvement program. These are included on the cover page. I'm going to skip right ahead to the projects that are listed, beginning with deferred maintenance and site improvements, which is found on page 3. A total of 39 million has been programmed in the CIP for this project. It should be noted that while there is no out-year amount included in the CIP, this project is considered to be an annual program. It should also be noted that the budget includes a proposed deficiency appropriation of 2 million using bond premium proceeds, increasing the total budgeted funds to $12 million. The institution has identified stadium waste slope stabilization as a new project in fiscal 2022 that it plans to fund utilizing this program. This project became an urgent project that will address life safety issues by repairing and stabilizing the foundation of a major section of roadway and its adjacent hillside. In the last 3 years, the state has provided $32 million to support deferred maintenance projects at the university. To better track the progress of projects funded through this program, it is recommended that Morgan annually submit a project status report. DLS will work with Morgan on the details of the content of this report during the interim. The second project concerns the new Health and Human Services Building Phase 2, which is found on page 4. Funding is included in the CIP to complete design and begin construction of the new Health and Human Services Building. The current total cost of this project is $157.8 million, including $16.4 million for movable and audiovisual equipment. Morgan should provide the committees with an updated cost estimate and the need for the large movable equipment and audiovisual request. A new project added to the CIP this year is the campus expansion Phase 1 Lake Clifton High School demolition, which is also found on page 4. A total of $12.7 million is programmed in the CIP for this project, with $0.9 million scheduled for design in fiscal 2022. Located roughly 2 miles from the main campus, the acquisition of the Lake Clifton High School property would allow for campus expansion, including the construction of a new convocation center. Demolition of the high school is expected to be complete in fiscal 2024. The last project included for funding in fiscal 2022 is for the new Science Center Phase 1 Washington Service Center demolition. Demolition of the Washington Service Center and associated facilities will create space for the new Science Center. A total of $10.6 million is programmed in the CIP for this project, with $0.8 million scheduled for design in fiscal 2022. Demolition of the Washington Service Center is expected to be complete in fiscal 2024. There are 3 out-year projects identified in the CIP, which are summarized on page 5. I will move ahead to the recommended actions. The DLS recommended actions are found on page 7. DLS recommends approving the 4 projects listed in the CIP for fiscal 2022, approving the deauthorization of funding for a project that has been completed, and approving the 2 pre-authorizations for the new Health and Human Services Building Phase 2. This concludes my presentation, and I would be happy to answer questions.
Excellent presentation, Ian. Way to hit the high points. Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, seeing none. We'll now hear from President Dr. David Wilson. President Wilson, how you doing?
Pretty well. Thanks for asking. And let me start by thanking Mr. Klein for the analysis, and of course to the chairs and members of the subcommittees. We are very pleased to come and give you a progress report on the investment that the state is making in Morgan and Capital facilities. We too have given you an extensive response, and I will be very mindful of the time and be parsimonious in making our way through this in a couple of minutes. I just want to let you know that the investments that have been made in Morgan over the last decade have returned such incredible dividends to the state. Everything is up at Morgan. Retention is at an all-time high. Graduation rates all-time high. Philanthropic giving at an all-time high. Research productivity, all-time high. Number of patents per $10 million of research, best in the state amongst research institutions. And that would not have happened if there was not a concerted effort to improve the educational research facilities at Morgan. We are certainly are hoping for support for the governor's recommendation in our budget of $44.8 million with the 4 projects that Mr. Klein has brought before you. We are making great progress on all of those projects. We're very excited about the possibility that we will acquire 59 acres of real property, the Lake Clifton property, for the expansion of Morgan for indefinitely. We are planning to build on that facility, a physical education complex, multi-convocation center to start. But right now we are landlocked, and this is a great opportunity. It's about 2 miles from the campus, and we have a letter of intent with the city of Baltimore, and there's about $900,000 included in our request to enable us to go forward and to finalize that particular agreement. You have asked us to address 2 comments. The first one is on page 3, the second one on page 4, and I'm going to turn to Sydney Evans, our our Vice President for Finance and Management to briefly respond to the item on page 3. And he will be followed by Ms. Kim McCalla, who is our Associate Vice President for Design, Construction, and Facilities in Morgan, to briefly respond to item on page 4. And I will then come forward and in 30 seconds close it out. Okay, Mr. Evans, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon to the chairs of the subcommittees. I too want to thank all of you for the work that you do on these committees and the support that Morgan State University receives. On page 3, the question, comment from Mr. Klein was to better track the progress of projects funded through this program initiative. It is recommended that Morgan State University annually submit a project status report. The Department of Legislative Services will work with Morgan State University on the details of the content of the report during the interim. The university submits a report annually. However, we look forward to working with DLS to provide the details and format desired. Thank you.
Okay, and next up would be Kim McCalla.
Good afternoon, and thank you, members of the committee. In response to the question on page 4 regarding the updated cost estimate for the Health and Human Services building and a description of the large movable equipment, we've just recently received the design development estimate, and we are going over it. As soon as we are completed with our analysis and have VE'd valued engineer the product back to budget, we will more than happy submit it to staff as requested. The large movable equipment for the audiovisual is to allow for the nursing program to have for their training and simulation robotics with virtual augmented reality. This will start bringing up their labs to the status of other universities around. And we are looking forward to working with them and having a Class 1 operation for campus. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
And with that, the university accepts all of the recommended actions that Mr. Klein has put forward. I do call your attention to item number 5, where he is recommending the approval of the deauthorization of $108,947 in general obligation bonds that were previously appropriated to us in 2014 for the new School of Business and the connecting bridge. Why am I bringing that to your attention? Because we have a very strong management and supervisory team in place here at Morgan, and under the leadership of Sydney Evans and for the last 13 years, Kim McCalla, every project that I can recall that has been authorized by you that we have undertaken has been brought in on time and under budget. And we have returned just a little bit of money every time back to the state. And so with that said, once again, on behalf of our Board of Regents, our faculty, our students, and our alumni all over the state, we appreciate the great investment that is being made in this institution. And we always say to you, with an investment, the state should expect a significant return and a significant dividend. And we hope that we are providing that to the state of Maryland.
President Wilson, I know you list a lot of accomplishments, but your vision, your leadership since I've been here in the Senate has really been making Morgan State thrive. And you mentioned it at the end, your fiscal management has been second to none. So really appreciate your leadership there at Morgan State.
Thank you very much, Senator Peters. And as I said, we have a strong team here, a strong team. I'm very excited that when we get an opportunity to add to our team, we have immensely talented people from all over the United States wanting to join us. And so it is a delight to be on the team here.
Any questions for the president? Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Okay. Andrew, you're up, Department of the Environment. If you could hit the highlights, Andrew, we'd appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. So 9 programs and major changes are for the Drinking Water Revolving Loan Fund and Water Quality Revolving Loan Fund in terms of their cash flow management. So more special funds being reflected in the fiscal 22 allowance. Jump right to the issues. This is Exhibit 5 talking about the Bay Restoration Fund. The Department of Legislative Services revenue estimate for the Bay Restoration Fund is slightly higher than the revenue estimate reflected by the agency in their committee narrative that they submitted. Therefore, there's around $57.9 million of the fiscal 2019 through 26 time period. It looks that money could potentially be used for other projects. TLS does note that in the bold language there. And the pay-go recommendations to concur with the governor's allowance and the GO bond recommendations to also concur with all the programs noted there. Thank you very much.
That was phenomenal, Andrew. Any questions for Andrew? Thank you very much.
I think Senator Peters, there's a question from our side.
Oh, is there a question? I'm sorry. Senator Eckert, apologize.
Thank you very much. And I think I may wait for the department. Thank you. Is that all right?
That's fine. Okay. Secretary Grumbles, are you on with us? Anybody here from the Department of Environment?
The secretary is coming in right now.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, Mr. Secretary, how you doing?
Very good.
We're all in agreement, and we have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
So, Senator Eckert, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. And hey, Mr. Secretary, how are you today?
Excellent. Thank you.
It's one of my usual questions. You know, I'm always concerned living in Dorchester County and having a lot of small municipalities who need a lot of help from the Chesapeake Bay Fund. I'm just curious because I think there are several bills working their way through the session this year that would stand to like to use some of the Bay funds for various initiatives. Can you help us or provide for us a list of projects that might be potentially bumped if that occurs? I mean, we usually have several projects that you all are working with our folks, whether it's failing septic systems or whether it's some of our treatment plants that may be under consent orders or some of our smaller municipalities. So is that something you could get back to us on, or did you want to comment on that now?
Absolutely. We will get back to members of the committees. And my comment on it is that we embrace and appreciate the continued support of the committees on the Bay Restoration Fund and funding it. You are correct, though, that there are several bills, important bills pending that from the Clean Water Commerce Act to the Climate Solutions Now Act to the Urban Tree Program legislation that do put new commitments and responsibilities on the Bay Restoration Fund. And we do have concerns, just like we have concerns relying on anticipated revenues rather than actual revenues. So we will provide a list to members of the committee of specific projects, capital infrastructure, CSO projects or stormwater projects, other projects that could be impacted by the increase up to 35 million diversion of funding for other specific projects, not necessarily ones that traditionally have been paid for through the Bay Restoration Fund. We'll provide that right away.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairs or both chairs. Thank you for your indulgence patience and letting me ask this question because we have, as you know, our very, very small municipalities in Dorchester County and in the lower shore. You know, we've been hurt with COVID, as you know, so our counties are in and municipalities are in a real kind of between a rock and a hard place. I'll just tell you that. And we've been trying to get some comprehensive plans, as the secretary knows, to be able to bring a lot of projects online because it does make a big difference in our wetland areas. Everything we can get into a more efficient system than just letting it go into the ground. I'll just put it that way, or not be efficient and meet the goals that we need to meet. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Mr. Secretary, let's see any other questions for you.
Well, we really appreciate the support of the committees on our capital budget. It's important to the state, and thank you. And we look forward to answering any follow-up questions you all might have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to Grace for Department of Disabilities. And if you could hit the highlights there, Grace, we'd appreciate it.
Happy to. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's my pleasure to present the Department of Disabilities Fiscal 2022 Capital Analysis. The Department of Disabilities administers the Access Maryland program, which funds accessibility modifications to state-owned facilities. The fiscal 2022 request funds 5 projects that received design funds in prior years and 3 new projects, 2 of which will have construction requests in future years. As shown in Exhibit 2, there's a substantial amount of funds that remain unencumbered from fiscal 2020 and 2021 authorizations. In addition, there's funds unencumbered from prior years as well. This raises concerns about the agency's ability to oversee all these unencumbered funds from prior year projects. While the department expects to encumber a substantial amount of funds in the remainder of fiscal 2021, should encumbrances not be as high as anticipated, fiscal 2022 could easily start with an unencumbered fund balance that are obligated to prior year projects that's higher than a single year's typical authorization. DLS asked the agency to comment on how it expects to approach the demands of the Access Maryland program and oversee this all the different outstanding projects and ensure that the funds are encumbered in a timely manner. DLS recommends to approve the $1.8 million authorization for fiscal 2022. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Grace. Excellent highlights. Any questions for Grace? Okay, seeing none. Let's hear from Mr. John Brennan. And John, if you could focus on the recommendations, we'd appreciate it. Are you here with us?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Peters, Chairman Barnes, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. For the record, my name is John Brennan. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Maryland Department of Disabilities. I'm joined today by Ms. Kiana Baker, who is the Director of the Access Maryland Program, and Ms. Lori Markland, who is the Director of the Maryland Technology Assistance Program. We'd like to recognize the efforts of our analyst, Ms. Grace Peterson, and thank her for her thorough analysis. Also, MDOD respectfully supports the recommended action to concur with the governor's $825 million allowance for accessibility modifications, and we thank the subcommittees for their past support of the Access Maryland program. As Ms. Peterson mentioned, there were 2 requests for comments listed on pages 5 and 6 of the DLS analysis. We've included our response in the written testimony. So in the interest of time, I will not repeat those statements now, but we're happy to answer any questions the committee members might have related to the current level of unencumbered funds, as well as our ongoing efforts to encourage agencies to address physical accessibility at their facilities. That concludes our oral testimony. Thank you once again for your time. And as I said, we're available to answer any questions the committee members might have.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan, for your concise testimony. We appreciate it. Any questions for Mr. Brennan? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Thank you for what you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you once again. Have a good afternoon.
You too. All right, Patrick, you're up, and be as concise as you can. We're approaching the 4 o'clock hour here, so.
Yes, certainly. Let me share my screen here. Do you see the screen? Guess not. Hold on for a second. Let's try this again. Is this one? All right. How about now? Do you all see the Board of Public Works capital? Okay, great. There are 8 projects in this analysis. I'm only going to talk about 2 of them, and I will take questions from the other 6 if you would like me to. The 2 I'm going to talk about are the ones I guess that matter the most. First is the facilities renewal program. That's most of the money. It's $30 million in fiscal 2022. The observation I would like to make has to do with the facility renewal backlog. Here's a chart that shows what it's been since 2015. As you can see, in the last actual year, the backlog went up. And the reason for that is partly because there is a new building assessment unit that used to be done by the agencies themselves. Now General Services has begun assessing the unit, these assessments, and they just found more stuff. And that suggests to me that this is working well, because the projects were out there, just that we didn't know about it. Now we know. In the long run, this should help us with emergency funding and things like that. And so this should save us some money down the road. But in the short term, we're going to find stuff that we didn't know we had that or need help. The other project I'd like to talk about is something that does not get funding this year, but will get some funding soon. And that is the state office building at 2100 Guilford Avenue. What's happening here is this is an old building that used to have, I believe, the Division of Parole and Probation in it. It no longer has the Division of Parole and Probation in it. Instead, what the department is considering is, and what's in the CIP, is to renovate this building. We're not sure what the best course of action is with this building. First of all, State Center is still out there. The litigation, we're not clear. It's not clear what will happen with that. The administration is moving people out of State Center. We're not sure what those plans are. Once COVID is over, it's unclear what a state office space needs will be. They may not be as much as they were before, although certainly people will be returning back to work. And so we probably should understand that phenomenon a little bit better. And finally, there's a lot of office space in Baltimore City that can be leased. So we should examine all of these things. And so our recommendation is some narrative so that next year when we start funding this project, we have a better idea of what's happening around this building and around the city. And so that's our only new recommendation. The others are to approve the funds that are in the budget. And with that, I conclude my presentation. I can take questions.
Thank you, Patrick, for your concise report. Are any questions for Patrick? Seeing none, let's go to Secretary of DGS. If we could just comment on the recommendations, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, good afternoon, Chairman Peters, Chairman Barnes, and members of the subcommittees. For the record, I'm Ellington Chu, Secretary for the Maryland Department of General Services. Today I do have with me Nelson Riker, Deputy Secretary for the Department, and Lauren Buckler, Assistant Secretary for Design and Construction. I'll be respectful of this committee's time. You have our written testimony, so I will be brief. I do want to thank Mr. Frank for his thorough analysis. The department does concur with all 6 general obligation fund recommendations. We stand for any questions that you may have.
Great when we're in agreement, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for what you do. We appreciate it. Any questions for the Secretary? Okay, have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay, last, Andrew Garrison. Andrew, we're going to try to get out of here by 4, so if you could help us, we'd appreciate it.
We can do that. Can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is the budget for the capital budget for the Maryland Department of Health. There's 2 things I'm going to focus on, and that's the state-owned projects. One, first at the top here, Clifton T. Perkins is getting delayed and pushed into 24. There's only a little bit of funding for it in 22. We previously expected that project to be done by fiscal 23. The other items are those 2 below that. There's placeholders in there based on the outcomes of the facility master plan, which we are still waiting on from the department. We are asking the department to comment on both the delays in Perkins as well as when we would expect to see that facility master plan. There was a related report with the Springfield Hospital Center that we are still waiting on as well. That was extended, but that extension deadline has passed. Otherwise, we are approving everything in the capital budget as introduced. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great job, Andrew. Appreciate it. Okay, any questions for Andrew? All right. Secretary Schrader, got about a couple minutes. If you want to just comment on the recommended actions or agree to the allowance, either one, we're happy to do that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Joint Committees. Webster Yee, Assistant Secretary of the Department of Health for Secretary Schrader. Mr. Schrader is still with the governor at a press conference, I believe, so my apologies. With me are a number of my colleagues. We're happy to take any questions. We've submitted responses, and we thank Mr. Garrison and our DOS colleagues for their very insightful budget analysis. Pleased to answer questions.
Very good, Webster. Those of you who don't know, worked for Chairman Valerio many moons ago. So thank you for your service. Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you. And
thank you.
Unless there's anything else, Mr. Chairman?
I don't think so. You did a good job, Mr. Chairman. Not quite the record from last week.
4 minutes off, but I got it on before 4. So, but thanks everybody. Just so you know, when most of these agencies agree, we can move through it pretty quickly. If they don't, take a little bit of time, but
right on.
Got it. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We'll see you.
See you next week.